A history on global politics, creating an international order. In a contemporary world toward an ever-changing mix of social and political changes, the world is comprised of many different nations, states, and countries, having many forms of different governance. Now, there are two types of approaches in studying the politics. The scholars study the internal politics of a certain country. For example, a scholar might study the history of the bureaucracy of a country he is interested in. Second is the international relations, in which this study focuses on the interaction between the states from political, military, and other diplomatic engagement between two or more countries. On and all, the international relation explores the deepening of interaction between states, in which they call as a phenomenon of internationalization. Though internationalization is not equal to globalization, it is still a major part of it. On the other hand, internationalization refers to specifically to the deepening of interaction between sovereign states. This focuses on diplomatic interaction, political interaction, and economic engagement between nations. While internationalization is a significant aspect of globalization, the latter encompasses a broader scope of interconnectedness and interaction that goes beyond government-level interaction, involving a various social, cultural, and economic dimension of global integration.
Thank you, Mr. Lombardo, for the wonderful introduction. Now, let us move on and learn about the 4 attributes of world politics today. Do you know what are those? Well, let's learn about it. Let's go. The first attribute is that there are countries or states that are independent because they can govern themselves, meaning these countries are independent because they does not rely on other countries. The second one is that these countries interact through diplomacy. So the diplomacy indicates their friendship with other country. And if they meet in personal, that will be called a diplomatic meeting. The third one is that there are international organizations like the United States or UN that facilitates these interactions. And the last attribute is that beyond simply facilitating meetings between states, international organizations also take on lives of their own. Now, let's move forward and learn about the difference between a nation and a state. But how and when can we say that something is a nation or a state? Well, we can say that it is a nation when it has these qualities. And we can say that it is a state when it has these 4 qualities. Now, let us move on to the interstate. The origin of present-day sovereignty can be traced back to the Treaty of Westphalia, a set of agreements to end a 30-year war between Catholicism and Protestantism. The Westphalian system provided stability for the nations of Europe until Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon believed in liberty, equality, and fraternity. The freedom of expression pioneered by Napoleon was also known as the Napoleonic Code. Napoleon forbade birth privilege, encouraged freedom of religion, which he believes that people are free to choose what religions they want to believe. He also promoted the meritocracy in government, which you could get hired if you're qualified. But then, he was defeated by Anglo and Prussian at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. And since people already had taste of freedom, the royal powers created a new system that in effect restored the Westphalian system.
The Westphalian and the concert system has divided the world into two different sovereign entities. Many want to transcend it like Napoleon Bonaparte, who infringes other states' governance, while others just want a more heightened interaction between sovereign states for greater cooperation. This desire is called internationalism. Now, internationalism comes into two different broad forms. The first form is the liberal internationalism, in which emphasizes the importance of individual liberty, democracy, and free market. It believes that free trade, open communication, and international institutions can promote peace and prosperity by creating a system of interdependence between nations. Now, Immanuel Kant has stated that the state is like the people, and like a group of people living together, requiring a government to prevent lawlessness. Should not the same principle be applied to other states? Next is Jeremy Bentham, advocates the creation of international law that would govern the interstate relations. He also believes that the objective of global legislators should aim to propose a legislation that would create the greatest happiness of all nations together. Next will be Giuseppe Mazzini. He believes that free independent states should be the basis of an equally free cooperative international system. He argues that if various Italian mini-states unify, one could scale up the system. For example, a United States of Europe. He firmly believes that a unified nation-state should be the basis of a global cooperation. The socialist liberalism. This approach emphasizes the importance of social justice and economic equality and solidarity of international relations. This ideology believes that capitalism and imperialism are the root cause of poverty, inequality, and conflict in the world, and that a socialist system based on collective ownership and democratic control of resources is the key of creating a world where everyone is equal everywhere. Now, the proponent of this idea is Karl Marx. Karl Marx believes that any form of internationalism should deliberately reject nationalism, which rooted people in domestic concern instead of global ones. Next, he placed premium on economic equality. Next, also, he sees the world as not as countries but as a class. Capitalist being the rich people, proletariat, which is the people who works for the capitalist. He and his followers believes that a socialist revolution seeking to overthrow and alter the economy. With their battle cry, workers of the world unite, you have nothing to lose but your chains. Upon Marx's death in 1883, his followers established a labor party in Paris in 1889, named the Socialist International. One of its greatest achievements is the creation of Labor Day and International Women's Day. The Socialist International collapsed, and from its ashes, a radical version emerged during the Russian Revolution in 1916, led by the Bolshevik Party and Vladimir Lenin. They created Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or USSR. In 1919, the Communist International was established to encourage other countries to be a communist either by peace or by force. Many Western forces didn't trust USSR in their efforts for war against Axis. In 1943, Comintern was dissolved by Stalin but was shortly replaced after the war by Communist Information Bureau, Cominform. With the collapse of USSR in 1991, whatever existing thoughts of internationalism was also practically disappeared. The SI managed to re-establish in 1951, with its influence primarily remained in Europe and is not a major player to this day. In the post-war period, liberal internationalism would be the main ideology of the world.